Okay, this is the first half of 1.5 of geometry. So an adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other. They share a common side and they share a vertex. But they can't be like overlapping. Angle 1 can't be within angle 2 and call it adjacent. They need to be next to each other and not share any points inside. So angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles over here. And we also say angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent angles. Vertical angles are two angles whose sides are opposite rays. The other way to think of that is if I can draw a line and draw a line, if I can draw two straight lines, it doesn't bend at all, then I can choose opposite angles. So 3 and 4, those are vertical angles. And 1 and 2, those are vertical angles. Complementary angles are two angles whose measures have a sum of 90 degrees. And we would say each angle is the complement of the other. And then supplementary angles are two angles whose measures have a sum of 180 degrees. So complementary add up to 90, supplementary add up to 180. The way I remember the difference, if someone gives a compliment and you take your two hands and put your wrists together and you put your hands on your chin and you say, "Aww," your hands are making a 90-degree angle. So when you get complimented, your hands are making a 90-degree angle. Complementary adds up to 90 degrees. Okay, so if we look at this picture up on the right and look at the angles they're talking about, they want to know, are angle BFD and angle CFD adjacent angles? While they share that side, that FD, they are not adjacent because they're overlapping. They're not just next to each other, they're overlapping. So no, they are not adjacent angles. And then our AFB and EFD vertical angles. AFB and EFD. Now if I try to draw straight lines here, so I could draw the straight line over AD, but do you see that if I try to do it with E and B, I'm going to have to bend? Maybe that's easier to see without that blue there. Straight line across here, but I need to bend it to get E and B on the same line. So no, they are not vertical angles. And then our AFE, oops, that was pretty bad. AFE and BFC complementary. Well, I know that AFE is 62 degrees and BFC is 28 degrees, and 62 plus 28 equals 90. So yes, they are complementary because they add up to 90 degrees. Okay, let's try it on our own now. Is AFE and CFD vertical angles? If I try to draw my straight lines, straight line there, straight line there. Yes, they are. Yes, that is true. Because their sides are opposite rays. Or my method, I can draw two lines. Oh, whoops. Let's erase that so we can get that off the picture. Okay, so that A was yes. Now BFC and DFE, are they supplementary? Well, if they're supplementary, they add up to 180 degrees. So 118 plus 28, is that equal to 180 degrees? No, because that's a 146 degrees. And then I'll switch colors here. BFD and AFB, are they adjacent angles? Yes, they are, because they share this side right here. They share BF, and they don't overlap at all. So that was, B was a no, C is a yes. Okay, if our picture isn't marked, it doesn't have any arcs and angles, and in the angles, and it doesn't have any angle measurements, we can tell if angles are adjacent if they're next to each other. We don't need any markings to know that. We can tell if they're adjacent and supplementary, because if they add up to 180 degrees, they're going to make a straight angle, so just make a straight line. So we can see that without it having been marked. And we can also tell if they're vertical angles. But if there's not any marks on it, we can't tell if angles or segments are congruent. We can't just eyeball it and say, hey, those look to be the same, so they must be congruent. Nope, it has to be marked. Same thing with, we can't tell if an angle is a right angle. That also needs to be marked, and we can't eyeball it. And we can't eyeball if angles are complementary, if they add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so if we look at this picture, we can make some conclusions from this picture here. So since angle 1 and angle 2 have that red arc marked, we know that they are congruent. If we look at angle 3 and angle 5, we can tell that they are vertical angles. Right, I can make two lines there. So angle 3 and angle 5 are vertical angles. Angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Angle 2 and angle 3 are adjacent. Angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent. Angle 4 and angle 5 are adjacent, and angle 5 and angle 1 are adjacent. Remember, adjacent just means next to. And then I know that angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent supplementary angles. They're adjacent, they're next to each other, and they add up to 180 because they form a straight line. I also know that 4 and 5 are adjacent supplementary angles because they're next to each other and they make a straight line. Okay, so let's try this on our own looking at this new picture. We want to know, can we make the conclusion from just what is marked in this diagram? So, do I know that TW is congruent to WV? TW and WV. Yes, I do, because they're marked. A, yes, marked. B, do I know that PW is congruent to WQ? It looks like they are, but since it's not marked, I cannot conclude that they are congruent. C, is angle TWQ a right angle? Well, it sure looks like one, but since it's not marked, I'm not allowed to say that it is. So no, I can't tell. And finally, D, TV bisects. Remember, bisects means splits into two. So does TV bisect PQ? No, it doesn't, because it's not marked. If I was asked if PQ bisects TV, my answer would be yes, because PQ goes through the midpoint W, and TW and WV are marked as being congruent. Oops. And our lesson check. So, name a pair of the following types of angle pairs. So number 1, vertical angles. Angle AFE and angle DFC are vertical angles. Two, complementary angles, so they add up to 90 degrees. And remember, I need to use something that's marked to be that is marked as 90 degrees, because I can't just assume it from the picture. So if I look here, this angle is marked as 90 degrees. So angle AEF, that guy, and angle FED are complementary angles. And here's your homework.